Good morning, Alex. It's great to have you here. First week of the month. It's always great to have you. What do you have for us today?
Good morning, Tammy. It's good to be here. And yeah, today I'm going to talk a little bit about attunement. So it's going to go back to some of what I've touched on before with communication and just resolving conflict and when things get kind of heated with the pain of betrayal. So I'll talk a little bit about communication, conflict. In the book, there's conflict intimacy, which just sounds like those two words shouldn't go together, but how do you stay connected? How do you manage and get through conversations, when they're hot, when you're in pain? So I'll talk a little bit about attunement to start on both sides of the relationship, and then also communication, how to work through some conflict. So part of that attunement, what I want to talk about today is getting on the same team. So especially in recovery, both the addicted partner, and I'll refer to as the addicted partner or the unfaithful partner, and the betrayed partner, they can be very misaligned in what they're thinking, what they're experiencing as they're healing, and what they need. So just getting on the same page is really important. And sometimes the pain is so deep, and the hope factor is so low, we can't even look past today, let alone be in agreement of where the relationship might be in a month from now. So getting on the same page can be difficult, but I think the bigger the gap in understanding what's happened and the depth of the pain, and also what's required to begin help healing the pain of betrayal, the more uncertainty and tension there will be in the relationship. So if we can close that gap through communication, through sharing, through navigating those tense moments, which a lot of us don't know how to do, or struggle to do when we feel our fear coming up, our anxiety, our shame, our pain, our anger, it is really difficult to be present, even to gather our own thoughts, let alone try to communicate and understand the person on the other side of the relationship. Again, whether that's the person that hurt you, betrayed you, or it's the person you're trying to connect with and understand and heal with. So I think it's important to understand that when we get on the same page, it doesn't mean that both partners have to agree on everything. I think we've talked about validation before, and that validation isn't a stamp of approval. Like what you said is valid, and I agree with everything you said. That doesn't mean that at all. It just means really we can track with you. I can track with you. When couples can track with each other and understand what the other person's going through, that establishes a very powerful foundation for moving forward. Whatever the relationship looks like going forward and in the future, or whatever each person's goals might be for the relationship, that communication, that tracking with each other. So think about that tracking, validating, listening, all those important things. So that just being on the same page, I think, eases the tension in the room. It helps us feel a little bit more relaxed when people get us, they understand us. So yeah, it just helps us get through the day sometimes. And I know I've talked about that with communication being key. So, with attunement, communication is, how do you maintain a sense of connection even during conflict? Listening is the greatest thing we can do for our relationship. I put in the book, 40 Forms of Intimacy, listening is loving. Like, that's how we feel loved. That when we are listening to someone else, we are loving them because we're putting other things aside. We're showing up. We're being present for them. We're really showing them that they matter. So when we can stay focused when someone else is talking, and this works for all our relationships, but especially in our partner relationship, but we can listen to them, stay focused without imposing our thoughts, our values, maybe how we would handle the situation. And we really enter their reality. This helps us develop accurate empathy. So it's not just sympathy, it's not just I hear you and I feel sorry for you, I feel bad, or pity. It's empathy. And if you've ever seen, there's a short video Brene Brown put out on YouTube several years ago, a little animated. It's like a minute and a half, but it shows you the difference between sympathy versus empathy. So if you look that up, sympathy versus empathy, that helps you understand that. But when we develop accurate empathy for someone, that's when they really start to feel relaxed. They like, oh, he gets me. She gets me. It's not just kind of a canned answer or a reflective statement that a therapist told you. It's like, you're present with me. I see it right now. And you have empathy for what I'm feeling right now. So that really starts again to ease any tension. And anytime we don't have to spend energy to convince someone what we're feeling, we have extra energy to be present and extra energy to connect and extra energy to listen to the other person. So especially I see this with betrayed partners when they have to spend so much time, and it's just emotionally exhausting to try to convince the person that hurt them how they're feeling over and over again. It's just excruciating at times. So if they don't have to spend that energy convincing, hey, I'm hurt in this way, and the unfaithful person, the addicted person gets it, and they can track, and they know, oh, okay, this is a very sensitive area. I have to slow down here. I have to be careful. I have to validate their pain. Well, it just, I think, expedites the healing process like I've never seen. And I see that often with couples. And so I talk about that a lot when I meet with couples, that, validation is the bridge between two people, validating them, validating the other person. That's the bridge to the other person. It's a bridge to their heart, a bridge to understanding their pain, and there's connection that can happen. So in validating their pain, also, it doesn't mean they completely agree and see everything exactly the way the other person does. But when we slow down to truly listen and seek to understand someone else's truth, their reality in the moment, they're having feelings and thoughts we can't see. So we're kind of along for the ride, and we're picking up on these visual cues or the tone, and we're trying to put that all together. A lot of times we just need to ask, but when we seek to understand and ask things like that, can you help me understand what's going on for you right now? Do you know what you need? Sometimes we don't know what we need when we're overwhelmed, but do you know what you need? That's powerful. They're present, they're showing up. Again, we're building that bridge back to the other person. And this can save us, especially when we have these heated topics that we have maybe had disagreements for decades. And those things are going to come up when we find ourselves slipping into those debates or conversations. They can easily end up into conflict. So when we track with someone, think about tuning as we're tuning into their station, right? Many of you remember the old days when there used to be radio. Like, that was the only form of music. So when we are tuned in, we move, the dial used to move, right? We move the dial and we stay tuned in to them. We're showing them that they matter. And when we take care of, I hear this over and over again every week when I'm doing counseling with people. When people feel that they matter, they know that they matter, it just soothes them. They're a completely different person. Again, they don't have to convince the other person to help them feel that they matter, that they're worthy of attention, and that their pain matters. So when they feel that they matter, and they know that, even in those moments, it might not be consistent, might not be more than 60 seconds that they actually feel that. But if we can get more of these moments, how wonderful is that? But but we need this on both sides, right? Both partners need this. So the addicted person, the unfaithful person, as well as the betrayed partner, both need to feel heard and feel understood. And I think we can only feel that when the other person is truly present with us. They're listening, they're demonstrating that what we have to say matters. So again, so attuning is like tuning into their station, just completely focusing on them. That's attuning. And that's one of the forms of intimacy, attunement intimacy. So if you have a book, you could read that chapter and learn a lot more about that. But also think of tracking. Tracking is like following. If I'm following their footsteps, I'm following how they talk, how they walk, what's happening with them. Again, I care enough to follow and track with them and not go off on a completely different path. I can understand. And now we can sync up our thoughts. we can begin to understand what's going on with them and in them, these things that we don't know. Again, sometimes as a betrayed partner, there's so much going on. It shouldn't have to be all on you to sort through all those painful feelings, some of the confusion, the signals you're getting from the addicted partner, and try to sort through what's true, what's honest. You've had to do that for a long time, right? Especially if there's been a lot of blame shifting and gaslighting and all of that. So you're only able to send certain signals, and you don't have to have it all figured out. But when you can articulate that, what's going on inside you, I'm feeling this, I need this, that's very important. I think, especially, I know there are a lot of female addicts or addicted partners as well, but I know particularly with men, a lot of times I just hear over and over, they want to get it right. They don't know what to say, they don't know what to do. So sometimes they need a little bit of leading, but I completely get it. And I hear that often too, where the betrayed partner is just tired. I don't want to be your teacher. I don't want to have to, I need you to learn how to do some of the stuff on your own, not just figure it out, but go listen to some podcasts, go read some books, talk to your therapist about this, learn some of these things on your own. Again, betrayed partners are already exhausted. They shouldn't have to be the teachers, but when you can give that real-time information about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, what you're needing, that is very powerful, because there is no book, there is no podcast, there's no other source that's going to give you that specific information, because it changes. So when you can do that, that's great. But when you can't, it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to have the other person talk, the addicted partner talk, and not that they have to go on this treasure hunt or look for clues and try to figure it all out. We don't want to leave anyone just to guess, but it's just a lot, right, for a betrayed partner to hold on to try to reconcile what's happening in the present, reading those signals, what happened in the past, what can I believe, how can I trust this, all of that that's going on. So but again, when the betrayed partner is able to rest and just feel heard, they are going to start to heal. And that's where the unfaithful person, they play a huge part in the healing. I think they hold the key, which is very scary for a betrayed partner. And again, they can heal, a betrayed partner can heal on her or his own, and they don't need another person to help them heal from that. They don't need the person who committed the unfaithful acts to heal. But if a couple is trying to move forward and establish a new relationship together, and they want to build trust and want to take those next steps, they need their partner to do something different, right? They need the unfaithful partner to be present, to track, to attune, to communicate, to initiate a lot of things. And validate, right? So that's why listening and validating is so powerful for relationships in general, but especially when trying to repair betrayal trauma. So for quite some time, the person who betrayed is going to need to do a greater share of the work. And I hear that often. I think it might be passed around, at least locally, in some of the SA circles, the support group circles, where guys will say, I have to do 90% of the work. And I loved hearing that from guys who are the betrayers, come in and say, I know I have to do 90% of the work, or I have to carry this marriage. And for a while, I'm like, yeah, you do. I agree. There's a lot of work you need to do. The betrayed partner is already doing a lot. Again, they're going through a lot of things they don't want to, thoughts, again, feelings, and just trying to settle into good self-care and to trust themselves, their intuition again. But as far as the communication, the sharing, the initiating, they have to do a lot. The unfaithful person has to be active in therapy, constantly learning. They're doing some family of origin work, possibly some their own trauma. They're learning how to navigate the addiction and heal from that and stay sober. And they're also needing to learn how to repair betrayal. And there are at least 3 things going on simultaneously. And so it's a lot of work, but I have seen this process just go so much more smoothly. It's faster when the unfaithful person initiates, right? They're not waiting for the betrayed partner. Again, they're exhausted, they're ready for the other person to do some work. So when the unfaithful person initiates the check-ins, we talked about check-ins, I think, the last webinar, but when they come forward and they are forthcoming with honesty, and they say, okay, do you want to do a check-in tonight? Or what time should we do a check-in tonight? What time works for you? And they lead that process. Wow, that I just see a huge difference in how much time it takes and how much calmer and safer the betrayed partner feels, because they don't have to chase them down or wait weeks, and then come maybe tell me that, we haven't done any check-ins. Like, he hasn't come to me for 3 weeks with any kind of check-in. And that's a long time to not have a check-in, even just a brief version of that, where we're sharing. When we're sharing, we're communicating. That's helping us stay attuned and on track with the healing process. But it's also helping each other, right? That's intimacy. I think every couple, anyone you want to be in a relationship with, this could be your children, your friends, but we have to check in. We have to build intimacy, closeness with them by staying attuned, staying up to date, asking questions, talking. And a lot of times, an unfaithful person, the addicted person, does not want to bring things up. Like, things are going pretty good, we're having a good day, I don't want to bring anything up. That's probably the worst thing you could do, because it's kind of avoiding. It's getting back into that avoidance, and it's communicating to the partner that, you just destroyed safety, destroyed her heart, and like, you're communicating you don't matter, or we're okay, or we're over this, versus saying, I know how, this trigger came up, I wonder how you're doing. This thing was difficult for you in the past, so how are you doing with that? I know this time of year, it's difficult, or the month of November, or whatever that trigger was. If you can stay ahead of that, and say to that person, ask your betrayed partner, like, how are you doing? Just go into that. That can do so much more to repair the trust, to help her know, again, that she matters, that you're thinking about her, if it's a female betrayed partner. But so when guys tend to hesitate, or they don't want to stir the pot, or bring things up that will possibly turn into a long, painful conversation that they don't feel they can win, or they don't feel like, it's going to go well. Again, that type of avoidance actually does more harm and prolongs the recovery process. So those, again, on the other hand, that when guys initiate the check-ins, or the women who are needing to repair what they've done, and they inquire how the partner's doing, they're not afraid to bring things up. Again, this can be difficult, but if you can bring up the hard things, they're going to be there waiting. They're going to come up. So if you can go there, you can initiate that process. That's where you're showing courage. That's where you are, again, communicating that you believe in healing this relationship and making it look very different. So when you lead that process, and you can lead with respect, sensitivity to timing, and how you say things, when you say things, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think when your partner understands that you're trying, something looks different, and you are doing something that is helping, that helps. So, and then having relentless patience to answer the same questions over and over again. Just think about that, relentless patience. And I've heard people, and I share this too with my men's groups, and if you have to do that 1,000 times, and I thought about this yesterday, I was talking to somebody, and I was thinking 1,000 is not even enough. If you think about 1,000 times, I have to answer the same questions. 1,000 times I have to be here, be present, and see you cry, and see your anger. And again, that anger is okay. It's different. I mean, anger is a feeling. It's anger over injustice is okay. We always have to watch what we do with that anger, right? If we are screaming or throwing things, and we are getting to that point, sometimes it is hard to control in the early stages. But when you feel anger, and your unfaithful partner is listening to you and is still there, I've seen that just really help couples heal, because again, 1,000 times, but maybe it's more like 10,000 that I have to listen to the pain, and it will subside as soon as they start to feel validated and heard and that you get it. It's not going to be this way in 3 months from now. It won't be the same in 6 months or in 2 years. It will look different. It's not going to be the same. But if you can be there, be patient, have relentless patience to answer the same questions over and over again, you're actually contributing to the healing. Because I think the default is we're going to be frustrated. I already answered that. You already asked me that. And defensive. Why are you asking me that again? And it's really shutting down any of the safety that you've already built. So if you can answer it again with sensitivity, as best as you can, gentleness, and not tell someone, I've already answered that, or why are you asking that, or why does that matter to you? And the why is very accusatory, right? Why puts people on defense. So if we can be understanding, I understand that, you want me to answer this, and I'm going to tell you. And sometimes we don't have new information. I think that's where the frustration starts, is I don't know what else to tell you. I've already answered this 100 times. So, but they need reassurance again. Their brains are trying to put together the pieces of it was just shattered. Trust was shattered, everything, their whole reality. So they need your help. And if you can do that and show up for them in the way they need you to in that moment, in that conversation, and that can really change everything. So, and with thinking of that too, sometimes what worked yesterday won't work today. So maybe yesterday they asked for, or you gave them a hug, and that helped soothe them or comfort them. But today they might not want any kind of touch. Like, don't touch me, stay away from me. I'm angry, I'm hurt. I'm thinking of maybe when you were with an affair partner or that, and I don't want that right now. So that can be confusing, to the person trying to rebuild trust. But that's where that patience comes in. That's where your flexibility, you have to be extremely flexible and patient, because that will change. The needs will change because the feelings change. We're humans. We all do that. We all have different feelings, numerous feelings in any given hour, but especially after betrayal, trauma, that changes so much more often. So be flexible, be patient in that process. Sometimes you can ask, like, hey, yesterday a hug helped, would you want that today? You can ask in a gentle way, try to comfort them. And sometimes you're going to get it wrong. Sometimes it's not going to work. And that's where it's just important for us to keep trying. Because, if we miss the mark, again, if we're confused, we're frustrated because, again, it worked yesterday or it worked in similar situations and it's not working now, we have to keep tracking. That's where the attunement comes in. We're tracking with them, and we're mentally recording. It's okay to write written notes too. Like, this worked before in these situations, but tune in and listen to specifically what they need in that moment. So I'm thinking also, if you're a person who's been betrayed, tuning into your feelings and needs will be very helpful here. If you need space and you don't want someone to touch you, do your best to make this clear. Like I said, sometimes it is difficult, and the message might not come out in a way that the partner can receive it, but it's very empowering for you to be able to say what you need, say what you don't want, and to protect yourself, to enforce your boundaries. It's okay to know what you want from 1 minute to the next, and it's okay to not know what you want from 1 minute to the next, again, because it changes, especially early in recovery. So it's okay to change your mind in any given moment. So you don't have to have it all figured out. There's, I think, a lot of fear with betrayed partners that if I let them back in, and I start to let them like hug me. For a lot of people, touch is very difficult in the early stages. So I know it's different for everybody, but if they've really been hurt and you want to let them back in and let them even sit next to you or hold your hand or hug you, any kind of affection, especially intimate touch, we might think, well, if I give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Especially if that's happened before, it's likely to happen again. So there's a lot of fear of that. It's okay to be guarded, to be hesitant about allowing the person that hurt you so deeply back into those, the most vulnerable places. So when you can, stay attuned to each other and talk about what works, sometimes you can celebrate those things and just call it out. Like, look, we're hugging. This feels good. Or what we're doing, we're holding hands, and we weren't doing that a few weeks ago. And a therapist would ask you that, but maybe you can like, hey, why do you think we're able to do that right now? And talk about what makes that possible. Be very brief. You don't have to get into a long conversation with that, but at least maybe call it out if you can. So I think when, again, the betrayed person is able to track with the unfaithful person and disclose to them when it's safe to do so, and what they don't like and what they need, they are empowering themselves, they're caring for themselves, they're showing self-respect, that they value themselves. Sometimes they need to say a clear stop doing that, or I need you to please do this. But many other times, I think it's helpful to give context. And that's when we, tell the person things like, when you go to a meeting and you're being open in the meeting and you come back, you actually participate in the meeting and you come back and tell me a summary of what you learned. And that helps reassure me that you're putting in the work. Like that little statement right there, to someone who's trying to rebuild trust, that's a reinforcement. And that can go a long way with someone. On the other side of that, you might say something like, when you went down to meeting with your therapist only twice a month without asking me, and if they were previously meeting every week, you decreased the meetings. That brought up a lot of fear for me. I was thinking that you didn't need much help anymore, that you had this all figured out, or that we're doing okay, but I'm still seeing that you need more help. Can you please help me understand how you arrived at that decision to decrease your recovery activities? Something like that is a calm conversation. And I think when we say that in a way that our partner can hear and they can respond to, like, to help me understand, is a very good entry into that. It's not a demand. You better get on the phone and start meeting with your therapist, get these other appointments. You need that, but you can communicate that in a way they can receive it. And if you're able to, if it's safe to do so, and it's hard to share that you're afraid, but if you can say, I'm afraid that you're not meeting with your therapist as often, and I need you to do that, it's great. But it could be good to ask that. Help me understand, how did you arrive at this decision? It's a longer way to say why did you do that, but I think it's a little easier to respond to. So when couples feel safe enough to share what's really going on, like the fears, they're doing that, as we talked about last time with the Fanos, the check-ins, you're sharing feelings. When you feel safe enough to do that, you're in a much better place to advocate for your individual needs. And when you're able to share the more vulnerable feelings, it might take some time to get there. We only share and only should share to the degree we feel safe. Right? If something's going to be used against us, I talked about that with emotional safety last time, but we need that consistent sense of emotional safety to begin sharing those deeper, vulnerable feelings. But that is the pathway to intimacy. That's how we feel closer. So, and when we know our partner is going to be there, they're going to track, they're going to listen to us, stay attuned, all that hits on that question, do I matter to you? And that is huge, right? We're worth listening to. We're worthy of their time. So that emotional presence, when they show up with their whole body, their nonverbal, their body language, everything is saying you're present and you care and you're listening. That is huge. So that will help when conflict comes up. That'll help when you're struggling to communicate. And we all need to do this, right? You probably know, friends, family, and their relationships, their marriages. We all have to do this, right? Everybody has to put forth effort to do this kind of thing. And it's not natural, I don't think, for us to have constant empathy for someone else and like to completely just track with them. We have thoughts, we have feelings, we have needs as well. But we have to learn that and constantly put forth effort to set our world aside, everything that's going on in us, and tune in to other people. And that's how we build relationship. So most of us can be pretty selfish at times. We like what we like, we want what we want, but so these are skills, things we need to develop, stay aware of. And I think that's what makes betrayal trauma recovery so difficult, is all that normal stuff that we all deal with in relationship is there, and it's all magnified. Everything else that maybe if you've been together, for more than a few months, you probably have had some problems. So if you think a few decades, there's been some accumulation of problems, of stress, of just things that haven't been able to function well or haven't worked out well or resolved. And now all of that's on the table. So remember that when things get hard, you're not only dealing with the present day betrayal, and if that was going on for a long time, of course, but you're dealing with a lot of the things that everyone else deals with too. And it's tough. I mean, relationships are hard. And I think that's why communication, being present, tracking, tuning in with somebody helps them know that they matter. And when we get to those core needs, that you see me, you love me, I'm a priority, I matter to you, you care about me. When we take care of those first, it gets so much easier from there. But when we ignore that, we're neglecting those core needs. Those are going to keep coming up until we can do something to soothe them, acknowledge them, and make sure our partner feels cared for. And that, again, it can be on both sides of the relationship. We all need that as humans, people that are in a relationship. So that's all I have for now. I don't know if you have any questions about that, Tammy.
I have lots of, I love that you said listening is loving. And I thought that's so true. And when people are distracted or whatever, it's hard to be connected and engaged. So I put a star by that. I always write little notes about that. And I was cracking up with the radio tune in, I remember, when rabbit ears on TVs and you had to go adjust them because otherwise you had the noise. And I thought that's what it is. It's that extraneous noise,
Yes.
And I want to fine tune. I want to really hear the clear message with things. So that was a really helpful analogy. Relentless patience. I have to say, I laughed at that one. I've always given myself a pass because I'm not a patient person. And I was just like, well, that's just, how I am. And a friend of mine who, I value her input. She said, you have patience. You just need to own it. And that shifted it for me. It really did. Because it was easy to just go, I don't have it. And she was like, no, you have it. I just have to, to be aware and tap into it. And it made a shift. And I found I was using a lot of as I previously mentioned, in conversations, which is, and I realized I was like, well, that sounds dismissive. It's like, you didn't hear me, you weren't paying attention. And I was like, well, if I'm trying to connect in a meaningful way, using, as I previously mentioned, I'm way too busy for, to go over this again. And I've worked consciously on dropping that little, preface to whatever it is, we're discussing. And these are so applicable for, not just, primary relationships and not just pain. So a situation last night with a work colleague, they sent me a text later in the evening about something that wasn't an emergency. And healthy boundaries, said, can we talk about this tomorrow? Yes. But what does my mind do? It goes like, blah, 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 they don't trust me, or they don't. And then I thought, instead of doing that, I'm going to be curious. So I had a call with that person today, and I just said, so you were sending me a message about this last night. You must have some feelings about that. Can you tell me more? Completely, I then understood what this person's question was. And, it was such a non-issue, and all the stories I was telling myself were completely not it. It was just, this person didn't understand. They were out of the loop. And I was like, and I could have made, more of a problem by just going, whatever I would have mentally done. So I loved that. I got out of my own way. You're asking, the betraying partners to do is put your feelings aside, be curious, ask the questions, what do you need? What's going on? And the avoiding check-ins, I can't tell you how many messages I get from betrayed partners who are going, he won't do his check-ins. He won't. So all of that avoidance and the lack of communication from it, just erodes any grains of trust that were being built. It just, it takes it all away. And at the end of the day, avoiding. So when I have a list of things, and if there's something I really don't want to do, I'm going to do that first, because I don't want the mental, weight of having to go, oh, I'm dreading doing whatever. I'm going to do it and get it over with and go on to the things that are, more fun to do. So,
Yeah.
like if addicts understood, betrayers, whatever, understood, like just do the check-in, like, and you're going to build trust and you're going to have connection. And I love that you were talking about, well, a hug might have worked yesterday, but maybe the only physical contact I can tolerate today is you're going to hold my hand, and look me in the eyes or sit next to me, whatever it is I need. But that's going to, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but man, if you're trying, like it's the action of like, you're doing things way different than you used to do when you completely avoided, so, but that fear of like, I'm going to do it wrong. Well, at least you're doing, and that, that's, really meaningful. So, and there was, oh, I love that you said, yes, they need to learn, and I'm not the teacher, like, the betrayed partner is not the teacher, but like I have, I'm a math major. So like the bell curves and all of that, like they're at this end, the low end of the, of the learning curve, and betrayed partners are way more emotionally attuned and way, way on the other side of the, but it, so, like, yeah, there's a learning curve and it's going to take them time. But it's like, we didn't all get all A's in school, so we're not going to get all A's, but as long as we're learning, we're going to keep making progress. So
any attempts we could make, and it's we want people to learn more information and try these new things, and if they don't work, don't give up.
Yeah,
keep trying, keep learning. And I like what you said about that, even that little introductory statement, right? As I mentioned previously, we don't know how we're affecting people unless we have the courage to ask, and someone else is going to see our blind spots. If we have the courage to ask them and we take that information in and we can make changes, we'll do that. But if we don't ask, if we aren't open to changing, and like, that's going to do a lot of harm. So it's important to keep learning, check, is this working, is that not working, and then not give up. That's, I think, what a betrayed partner who wants to stay in the relationship and make it work, when they see that their spouse or partner just gives up, like that didn't work, so they get frustrated and they walk away, they can take that, even if they know they're not going to leave the relationship, but when they walk out of the room frustrated and defensive, it sets off the same signals inside of like, I'm not worth him even staying in the conversation. So keep trying. If you're, addicted partner or unfaithful partner, like, keep trying, keep learning new things, and it's going to be a while, right? You're learning a lot of new information at record speed, and keep learning, keep trying, and keep getting back up, because it's a process.
And it may feel like at record speed for the betraying partner, and it feels like a tortoise speed for a betrayed partner. So I mean, like that, just understand this is a process. So Al, we've got questions. I'm going to, you can follow in the Q&A if you want, Alex. So everyone has a plan to be calm and attuned, but when you're in the moment and feel like you're punched in the face, it doesn't feel realistic to say, hold on a minute, let me collect myself. How can we wrestle through these hard in the moment conflicts when feelings are so heightened at that moment? How do you bring down the temperature? That's a great question.
Right. Yeah, that's where a lot of individual self-care, individual strategies, coping techniques will be helpful. And you might not have the same ones as the other person that you're talking with. So anytime we need a break, we should take one. Our body's going to tell us that we need a break. When we feel fear, blood flows to our feet, and it's telling us to get out of there. So if even the addicted partner is walking out of the room, a lot of times they're doing that because they are feeling fear, they're feeling shame. And of course, that doesn't work long term. Like, they can't just keep running away from conversations. But when we, on both sides of the relationship, know what's happening with our partner and maybe why they're doing what they're doing and what they need, and we can give them that space, and read their physical cues and be present with them. That's how that tracking and tuning really can help. Is if someone's really upset in the moment, like I say, and feels like you're punched in the face, I mean, you're going to defend yourself, right? If someone's going to punch me in the face, like I'm going to probably fight back, or maybe if they're bigger than me, I'm going to run away. But it's going to be automatic. And what we do in those situations, we can change that, but we have to be aware of the realistic response in our body that's telling us to protect ourselves emotionally and physically. So when you say, how do we hold on a minute, collect myself? There are some steps. I think I shared those actually in the last webinar, possibly the 7 steps for taking a break. But there are steps you can go through. People call it a timeout or a break, but if you can take some deep breaths, calm yourself, do what you need. And sometimes this needs to be 30 minutes, right? It needs to maybe be a couple hours that you come back to this conversation. But when you do those things that help you calm, listen to music, go for a walk. Some people will pray, or, call a friend about something else, but you're kind of resetting yourself and come back to it. Again, there are other steps in there. Like you want to think about what the other person's going through, think about, what you need, how you were talking, what was happening with you in that interaction. But when it gets really hard, that's one important thing to remember, I guess, is when the feelings are heightened, as you're asking here, we don't have to finish that conversation. It doesn't have to be the same conversation. So I like how you said, how do we bring down the temperature? And I think taking some deep breaths, sitting down, acknowledging that, if both people are acknowledging that, like, hey, we're escalating here. If you're able to talk like that on that level, what do we need to do? Like, can we take a break? If we say, can we take a break, or you're out of control, you need a break, that's very different. So let's come back to this. If we could say, this is an important conversation, I want to be able to show up for you as I know you need me to. So I need a break. Can I take about 5 minutes or half an hour? Can we come back to this? But definitely make an appointment, come back, honor that time that you said you'd come back. But there are a lot of physiological things we need to do that if we don't take care of, if our heart rate is going faster, if, we feel ourselves getting angry, blood flows to our hands when we get angry. So we feel ourselves, we can relax our hands, our fingers, sit down, breathe, kind of slow things down. Sometimes we'll be able to continue the conversation after maybe a minute, but a lot of times we might need to come back to it. And I don't know, I think we don't want to overuse that break. We don't want to just be running away every time and taking these breaks all the time, but sometimes our body's telling us we desperately need it. And if we want the conversation to go well, we have to have that plan. So think of a few things you can do. Talk about that with your partner if you can. What helps you when we start to escalate? This is what helps me. Let's start to use these little techniques more often so we can endure these very difficult conversations.
I love what you're saying of had that conversation with your partner. I mean, I have a plan, so it's not, I just have my individual plan. And if this happens, I'm going to do this. It's like, Alex, when we get into this heated conversation, I know I need to take a break. So I'm going to say, I need a 20-minute break. I'm going to check in with you in 20 minutes or 30 minutes, but I'm going to check back in with you, but I need a break. I know lots of people that go journal and they find that the journaling, but like you said, mindfulness, I've got my shoes off right now. So, but when my feet are connected to the ground and I'm paying attention to that, like there's grounding, real grounding for me. I'm like a walk, is super helpful too. So, but anything that gives me the space to kind of, process through and then, come back and say, let's talk about that. But I love what you also said too, is like, we don't have to start at, this spot where, the tension was like, okay, I've thought about this and, I hear what you're saying. I heard what you're saying and I want, whatever. But the plan, the two of us having the plan of like, this is what, how we can try this. And guess what? If that plan didn't work so great, we can adjust it, for the next time because there will be a next time. So, okay. Next question. Hi, I'm the betrayed wife, married 13 years. D-Day was 11 years ago. Wow. Every time I bring up safety, boundaries, and my feelings, he goes into deep shame and depression and suicidal thoughts. And that makes me feel bad for him. I was gonna say that feels manipulative. And so I don't bring it up again for months. How do I go about that? He does go to meetings and sees the CSAT, but he will not do his book work or do check-ins with me. And how do I go about that? Any thoughts? Appreciate it. So.
Yeah, it's very hard, especially for that long, because as a betrayed partner, I mean, every one of us needs to bring up our feelings and our need for safety. But as a betrayed partner, if you have certain boundaries and you bring that up, and that's activating his shame, which is common and can be legitimate, right? And depression and suicidal thoughts. But as Tammy, you're saying, that sometimes can be manipulative too. But if you need to bring these things up, so when you do, think about how you bring them up, as I was saying a little bit ago about, deliver it in a way that they can receive it. And sometimes people are in deep shame, and it's, again, legitimate. They're not able to function well, listen. They're overwhelmed with that. I would say if a lot of this has been going on this whole time, since Discovery Day 11 years ago, there needs to be a different level of care, perhaps, for him. If he's getting into depression and suicidal thinking, there needs to be something else on his end that he needs to do. Because if he is overwhelmed and these things are working against him, it's going to be difficult to show up for you, as you know, obviously. But for you, what you could do on your end, if he's doing his meetings, he's seeing his CSAT, you can, I think, make those needs known. Sometimes we have to establish firmer boundaries. As you're saying, he sees a CSAT, but he won't do the book work or won't do check-ins with me. So that's very important to ask that. And that's where setting those firm boundaries, I like, a lot of times it's the as long as, right? It's not a demand, it's not an ultimatum, but it's, I need this, right? Those are the boundaries. I will be able to be in this relationship as long as you do this, right? It's a critical need. You need him to do the book work. You need him to be in recovery, to be active in recovery, right? Not just checking the box, I went to a meeting. So it's okay to say that, no, I need you to do this. My other thought is, I wonder if you have done couples therapy or have tried that. Sometimes it's like the third or 10th counselor, sometimes that is the best one. So it's an exhausting process to find the right person. But if you can get into counseling, or meet with somebody who's trained in this and can see this, and they can reach him, they can see what's going on and call that out, and really ask him those questions. What's getting in the way of him? Why is he not doing his book work? I always want to be sensitive to the shame that is there. There's some exercises, like in Facing the Shadows, some of the early book work, that some guys, I could do it for 2 minutes and it's overwhelming, so I need to take a break. And I'll tell them, yeah, set it aside. I come back to it. I don't want you to be flooded in shame, but you have to come back to it, and you have to work on it, and you have to be sharing in group. You have to be doing the work. So if someone's not, we might have to step up the boundaries. We might have to step up what we're going to do. I think Vicki Tidwell Palmer has that book, Moving Beyond Betrayal. She has a lot of boundary statements. If you haven't already saw that, or something similar to that, that talks about how you frame those boundaries as critical needs you have, and really kind of what you need to do to protect yourself if he doesn't do his part of the recovery work. So those types of, that'll give you some good guidance, those types of workbooks and things.
Yeah, and I feel horrible for you. For 11 years, your needs, are minimized because of this. So I have some really practical ideas for you. Oops, so sorry. One is go to his CSAT with him, and it's collateral information. And so you can let the CSAT know he's not doing, any of the work. I know the Facing the Shadow workbook, Dr. Rob's, Sex Addiction 101 is even more just real basic stuff. And it helps, process through the shame little bits at a time. Troy loves, Finding Peace as the Shadows of Shame. I mean, so there's so many different things, but him if he really is suicidal, then the emergency room admission to a psychiatric I'm not minimizing mental health, please do not think that I am, but I know too many addicts that go, oh, and guess what happens? Then you go away, your needs get to be nothing, because he's shut you down, and that's not fair either. So it feels to me like, there's an opportunity to go, okay, if you really are suicidal and depressed and all of these, then, and if you need recommendations for mental health facilities, Tammy, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, I make referrals. Our program, we work with, he might be a candidate for our program as well, but more would be need to be revealed because that's a whole nother thing. But the other thing I thought of, Dr. Rob does a one-time 2-hour expert consultation. And with couples who are stuck, it's not therapy, it's not treatment, but he's worked with a number of clients who are they're not clients. He's done these consultations via Zoom, and like people that have gone to a number of therapists, but this is a long time to be stuck, and so that might be another option for you to explore. But I love Alex's suggestion too about your healthy boundaries are for your needs. This is what I need, and if he's unable and unwilling to step into that space, then your level of safety, your ability to support him, like I need to kind of circle the wagons tighter around me and take care of me. And I know lots of people, regardless of what the addict does or doesn't do, who find joy and peace, and they've got a whole life, and they do really well. But 11 years of his addiction and his lack of being willing to do action, that's a long time for you too. So my heart goes to you. If we can be of help, these are all, take what you need and leave the rest. So, but if we can be of help, let us know. Okay, so my husband is working on sobriety right now, but it definitely doesn't feel like recovery. I know there's a difference between sobriety and recovery. So how do you move from one phase to the next? He gets really defensive anytime we have a discussion, like I'm doing so much already and you're just bringing up another thing that I'm not doing right, and goes into a shame spiral.
Yeah, that's a common thing too, right? Again, like I mentioned earlier, for someone to say, I just want to get it right, feels like I'm never getting it right, so, and I don't know the whole case and everything that, you guys are struggling with or have tried, but sometimes that affirmation, that reinforcement of like, hey, you're doing this, I see that you are doing things differently. Again, that goes a long way with someone who's trying to do all these things for the first time, trying to be emotionally aware and attuned and communicate well and show empathy and all that. So sometimes your reinforcement of things he is doing well can be helpful. So if you're doing that Fanos that we talked about, affirmations is in there. So affirm, hey, thank you for doing that. Thank you for going to your meetings, or thank you, for how I noticed how you're talking to me in a different way. You're looking at me, you used to look the other way, or you're staying in conversations when they get difficult. So find those little things that you can reinforce. It's not completely your job to prevent any shame from coming up. Some of that shame, that guilt, he's going to feel on his own for what he's done. But anything you can do to reinforce the actual practical, observable things that he is doing can help. It reinforces it so he does it more. So it helps you as well. But I know at the beginning of this, you asked about sobriety versus recovery. And I always think of sobriety sometimes as I'm just not doing something, so a lot of people will use the term white knuckling it, right? I'm just trying hard not to act out, trying hard not to relapse. So, and often that is for most people early on. So I don't think it's always sequential where like we're in sobriety, now we're in recovery. Sobriety is always has to be there. But recovery, when I see guys in recovery, I see a shift in them. They're doing it for themselves. They're doing it for their partner. I actually like and talk about with guys a lot in my groups. I want you to shift to doing this for you, because it's only going to last so long that you're going to do this for her. It's not going to feel real or sustainable. So of course you need to do these things she needs you to do to feel safe and to save and repair the relationship. And maybe you're in recovery because of you got caught, right? Because of her telling you to go there, but you need to do this for you. So there's a shift that happens when people move from those early stages and now they're in recovery. So recovery, it's observable. How I see it, they are going to meetings, they are actively participating, they are sharing things, they're talking in a different way to you. They're different. There's something about that. Later on, they're sponsoring people, it might be a year or two, but they're helping other people. they are living a new life of recovery. So a lot of things have changed in their life. They haven't just removed acting out. They've added. I always talk about with guys too, we're not just working on sex addiction recovery. We're working on this new life. We're working on creating a new life for you, and hopefully a new marriage or a new relationship for you. So like things will change. They should be observable. There should be a different attitude. There should be, genuineness, hopefully humility and the surrender, the things that come with the 12 steps. There should be something that's noticeably different that he's demonstrating to you.
Yeah. I talk about abstinence, and then sobriety, and then recovery. And one of our fellow, so one of the people that I used to work with, I was like, oh, you're really hard on these guys, because he said the first 90 days, it's just abstinence. They don't even get to use the word sobriety. And I was like, oh, they don't even get to count that time. And I was like, oh man, every day has mattered to me. So, but that was where he was with things. And he held that line. It's like, the first 90 days, you're just abstinent. And then sobriety is, I'm not saying that, but like, it was just his perspective. But I really do see abstinence as I'm just not doing the problematic behavior. Sobriety is like, I'm starting to get a clue. I'm starting to do things. I'm working my steps, like you're talking about. But recovery is like I can stop and go, oh, I'm doing the 11th step, or I'm doing the 10th step right now. I can label those, but they're such a part of who I am now that I don't have to. That's just, they're ingrained. And like I said, even with this, work colleague, I was like, I can show up differently. I can do something different, or I can cause a problem. I get to choose, we learn. You didn't share, where you are in the process. So, we talked a little bit ago about the learning curve, and, how partners don't want to be the teacher, but there is a learning curve. The faster someone is taking the action, like the previous one was like, he's barely doing anything. It's been 11 years. That's really sad. This addiction is a 24/7 issue, and it's a chronic condition. So the more work we are doing to replace, the faster we get the benefits of it. So, doing the steps, and not just, going to meetings, getting a sponsor, working with our qualified professional, doing the homework that they assign. We've got work groups, the sex addiction 101, the out of the doghouse is for how to rebuild trust. That's a really solid one. We have healthy intimacy. I mean, we've got so many low cost psychoeducation that you don't get from therapy that are useful support. The more action on a daily basis that someone is taking, the more you're going to see those shifts. But you're going to, like Alex said, you're going to start to see those changes, because it's going to show up differently in life. But please, it's okay for you to go, when when you are defensive, the story I'm telling myself is that you are pushing me away, and you are not willing to be, engaged in a relationship with me, and hold the healthy boundary. Don't, and maybe not in the moment too, when it's, happening, but, talk about when you do that, when this happens, and maybe not even, but when your words are, defensive, I'm looking for connection, and, it's harder to see that. So, okay. And then one of the questions just disappeared. Oh, you got it. Okay. So, okay. Yeah. So the last question, and I know we're running out of time, but I need some help with providing intimacy and empathy for my wife. I'm projecting my mother on her, mother enmeshed men. Can you tell me why I'm incapable of giving her intimacy and empathy? Again, do all the work that you need to do, but also John Taylor has did a pair of webinars on our site. No, it's on sex and relationship healing. Sorry. And it was on mother enmeshed men. There's a lot of information. Dr. Adams did a mother enmeshed men. It's just more work, but if you're doing your solid recovery work, you start to have empathy for other people, and that, and she's not your mom, so, right. But you want to have a different relationship. So,
yeah. And I'd say too, like what we talked about, so the listening, the tracking, the tuning, all those things, are going to lead to intimacy, right? That builds empathy when you're tracking, you're listening. So work on the listening. I put a workbook in the chat for you as well. Help her heal can be helpful. So, but listen, track, tune, stay tuned in. That will build empathy, showing that you care, and that will lead to intimacy.
Yeah. And if you have to be thinking, she is not my mother, she is my wife. She is not my mother, she is my wife. And yeah. Anyway, thank you, Alex. I'll see you next month. Thanks everybody for joining. This recording will be posted on sexandrelationshiphealing.com later today. So see you all then.
Right.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.